It is time for another 1-minute market update where we talk about the two things that you should care about most as a homeowner. How much is my home worth today compared to what it was yesterday, and how long would it take to sell in today's market? We are in September now, so the kids are back at school. That means we are looking at stats from August. If I could describe the real estate market in one word right now, it would be depressing. On average, in the Greater Vancouver area, prices are as low as they've been since early 2023. So they've been fairly stagnant throughout the year, seeing some ups and downs, but for the most part, it's really been going in one direction. But there's maybe hope on the horizon. In a couple of weeks, the Bank of Canada are meeting again. It's looking like this time they may actually do a small rate cut again. Whether or not that actually makes a difference in the market, kind of tough to say. My money is on probably not, or not much of one anyway. A lot of the people that we're working with, both our own clients and just the mortgage brokers and stuff that we talk to, interest rates are still important for people, but it's not like the big driver that it was in 2022, 2023, when everything kind of went crazy. So remains to be seen. Obviously, nobody can see the future, but for what it's worth, I don't really think that the rate cut's going to have that dramatic of a difference. And I suspect that the prices are going to remain relatively stagnant throughout the rest of the year, if not come down a little bit, as they typically tend to when we get towards the cooler months into November, December, and things start to slow down. But anyway, that's enough of me trying to see into the future. Let's jump into the data. Starting off with Burnaby detached homes, you are down 2.2% from last month and down 4.4% from this time last year. New West, you're up 0.8% from last month and down 1.1% from last year. Coquitlam, you're down 1% from last month and down 6% from last year. Port Moody, you're up a tiny bit, 0.6% from last month and down 3.8% from this time last year. Port Coquitlam, you're down 0.2% from last month and down 5.3% from last year. That's a pretty big drop. Maple Ridge, you're down 0.8% from last month and down 3.8% from last year. And lastly, Pitt Meadows, you are down 1.7% from last month and down 5.8% from last year. As always, if this information is helpful or useful to you at all, I would really appreciate it if you hit that like button, or better yet, share it with somebody else who might also find it useful, or somebody whose day you just want to ruin because house prices are going down and this is super depressing to talk about. Jumping into townhomes now. Once again, starting off in Burnaby, you are down 1.9% from last month and down 1.7% from this time last year. New West, you're down 0.2% from last month and down 3.8% from last year. Coquitlam, you're down 0.6% from last month, but you're up 1% from last year. Port Moody, you are down 0.4% from last month and down 2.5% from this time last year. Port Coquitlam, you're down 2.9% from last month and down 3.7% from last year. Maple Ridge, you are up 0.5% from last month and down 0.4% from last year. And Pitt Meadows, you're up 1.6% from last month and 1.1% from last year. Pitt Meadows, a little bit of a shining star in townhomes for some reason. All right, jumping into condos now. Burnaby, you are down 0.6% from last month and down 5.5% from last year. New West, you're down 0.5% from last month and down 4.3% from last year. Coquitlam, you're down 0.2% from last month and down 5.3% from last year. Port Moody, you're down 1.1% from last month and down 3.5% from last year. Port Coquitlam, you're down 1% from last month and down 4.8% from last year. Maple Ridge, you're down 1.9% from last month and down 5.3% from last year. And finally, Pitt Meadows, you're down 1.8% from last month and down 5% from this time last year. Condos in the super depressing category right now, with losses basically all across the board. Before we jump into the days on market or how long things are taking to sell, what does all of this data mean for you as either a homeowner or a potential homeowner? There are really two kinds of people that benefit from the market as it is right now. The first one is first-time home buyers. The reason they benefit is because the lower prices make it that much easier just to get into the market. So somebody who's been watching the market for a while, seeing the 5 to 10% in some cases drop in prices means that they're able to get into the market with that much less cash in their pockets, or their mortgage is that much less if they have that cash already. So as long as your finances are steady and you're in a good position where you're planning on staying in that home for the next 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 years, it's probably a good idea to at least look at buying as an option rather than continuing to rent. The other person that benefits in this kind of a market is upsizers. So somebody who owns a home, maybe it's a condo or a townhouse, and who's wanting to move into something bigger. The reason they benefit is because the difference in price is smaller now than it is when prices start to increase. If you own a condo, for example, that's worth $500,000 and you're trying to buy a townhouse that's worth $1 million. If the market goes up 10%, that $500,000 condo increases in price by about $50,000. But that townhouse that's worth $1 million goes up by $100,000. So the difference is more as the price increases. But the opposite happens when prices are falling. That $500,000 condo loses about 50%, meaning it's worth about $450,000. But that townhouse that was worth $1 million is now worth about $900,000. So effectively, you're saving yourself, in this scenario, $50,000 by making that move now rather than waiting for prices to increase. But the same rule still applies as with first-time home buyers. If you're considering making this kind of a move, make sure that you're financially stable and make sure that you're planning on staying in that next home for a longer period of time, 5, 6, 7, 10 years. If it's a super short time frame, a year, 2, 3 years, you're probably better off just to stay put because we don't really know what the market's going to do over the next couple of years. Anyway, that's enough of my opinion. Let's get into the days on market. In Burnaby, you're up a little bit from last month, up to 25 days on market. New West, you're up a little bit as well, up to 26 days on market. Coquitlam, you're down a fair bit, down to 20 days on market. Port Moody, you're up to 25 days on market. Port Coquitlam down just a little bit, down to 22 days on market. Maple Ridge, you jumped almost double, not quite, up to 34 days on market. And Pitt Meadows, a significant drop, down to 14 days on market. They were sitting around 30 days last month. If you are considering making a move in this market and you want actual honest advice and not just be pushed to make a sale or a purchase, there is a link in the description below. You can click on it. You can book a time to chat with us. We'd be more than happy to go over your situation with you and give you some good, honest advice. I'm Angelo with the Atlas Group. I'll see you in the next one.